Hello and welcome to this workshop on the simultaneous evacuation guidance. My name is Richard Clark from the NFCC and I'm here to take you through some slides about the recent updates to this guidance. The aim of this session is to give responsible people and other interested parties an oversight of the newly issued guidance. By the end of this workshop, you should understand the background to where the guidance came from and what you should be doing before you need to use it. You should also have an understanding of the key changes in the new edition, understand the advantage of a common fire alarm over a waking watch, and why moving from a stay put to a simultaneous evacuation strategy should not be taken lightly and be based on a holistic whole building approach to the general fire precautions. You should understand that a cost-benefit analysis is essential to ensure residents are not put under financial strain, and that other than in the short term, a common fire alarm is more effective and cheaper than a waking watch. You should have an understanding of the management considerations that are needed when changing the evacuation strategy, and there will be a brief coverage of all the appendices in the document, along with a discussion of when a temporary measures can be removed. Responsible persons should follow the actions outlined in the Consolidated Advice Note, and while waiting for any outcomes of testing or competent persons reports, there are a number of actions that you should be carrying out. You should be looking at what provision of waking watch may be needed, accounting for the extent of the potentially combustible cladding and other general fire precautions present, for example, sprinklers and the layout of escape routes. You should also consult with providers of waking watch for costings and consult with the residents. You should also gain quotes for a common fire alarm to aid a cost-benefit analysis of a common fire alarm versus a waking watch. Once the information on the external wall system or other issues such as compartmentation have been identified, the responsible person needs to review the fire risk assessment in conjunction with advice from a competent person in terms of what may be required to move forward towards a simultaneous evacuation strategy if necessary. If, after taking a holistic view of all the factors, which are covered in this presentation, a change from a stay-put evacuation is necessary, then the simultaneous evacuation guidance should be followed. Soon after the tragic fire at Grenfell Tower in 2017, it became apparent that there were a number of buildings with the same type of cladding. Within days, London Fire Brigade had identified 5 blocks in Camden, and these blocks had to be decanted. With this situation unfolding around the country, it was clear that where possible, we would like to keep people in their homes. However, it was clear that stay put was no longer viable in buildings where the external wall system would fuel the fire. Although a waking watch, sometimes known as a fire watch, to temporarily replace a fire alarm was not new, there was no published guidance. So following on from the London Fire Brigade's initial waking watch guidance, a stakeholder group of fire experts, led and chaired by the NFCC, produced the first guidance in 2017, which was updated in 2018. The third edition, released in the 1st of October 2020, is jointly badged by a number of organisations. There are a number of key changes in the third edition of this guidance. This includes the idea that it should be really clear that residents must play a part in the safety of their building. Sharing information about what's happening is vital. Residents, if trained, can carry out the role of a waking watch and/or evacuation management, which have been given separate roles in this new edition. We have also included definitions of short-term and temporary, which are provided to assist responsible persons. These are that short-term is the time required to formulate a longer-term remediation plan, as soon as practically possible, but no longer than 12 months. And temporary is outlined as non-permanent measures implemented to mitigate an unacceptable risk in a building, such as an interim measure, adopted for the safety of residents whilst works to rectify identified fire safety failings are carried out. Greater emphasis has been placed on the need to install a common fire alarm for situations where remediation will not be completed in the short term. The key concern in terms of a cost-benefit analysis of interim measures is that unless the issues with the building that have caused the change from a stay-put to a simultaneous evacuation can be fixed quickly, a common fire alarm, as outlined in the guidance, should be installed. Evidence has shown that a common fire alarm will be cost-effective compared to a waking watch within 3 to 6 months. Changing from a stay-put to a simultaneous evacuation strategy due to the risk of rapid fire spread from the combustible external wall systems and/or other serious building defects has a serious impact on residents. This impact, which can be felt both emotionally and financially, should not be taken lightly. It should only happen when the responsible person, in conjunction with a competent person, determines through the fire risk assessment process that the issues with the building mean a stay-put strategy cannot be sustained until the building has been remediated. Although the guidance is predominantly for purpose-built blocks of flats over 18 meters, it can also be used where appropriate for flats under 18 meters. It may be also appropriate for hotels and residential care premises to bolster the general fire precautions that these types of building have as standard. Fire and rescue services should be informed when a change occurs and can be consulted on measures that responsible persons are proposing. However, it should be remembered that the responsibility for decisions about any change lies with the responsible person for the building. The collective effect of the fire safety measures should be considered holistically as opposed to each. Once the decision to move away from a stay-put strategy has been made, a cost-benefit analysis should be carried out to determine the solution to be adopted. This may indicate that the initial expenditure of installing a common fire alarm system is more beneficial than a fully staffed waking watch as an interim measure. However, whilst the responsible person is waiting for the competent person's report and reviewing the risk assessment, they should be obtaining quotes for a fire alarm and a waking watch. The term waking watch is sometimes confused with the evacuation management, which is why we have separated the roles. It is clear that if a fire alarm, in accordance with this guidance, is installed, there should be no need for a waking watch because the detection and warning is covered by the common fire alarm. However, there may still be a need for a person to carry out the evacuation management. A waking watch is a system whereby suitably trained persons continually patrol all floors and the exterior perimeter of a building in order to detect a fire, raise the alarm, and carry out the role of evacuation management. Evacuation management consists of on-site arrangements to facilitate a rapid, effective and coordinated evacuation, and to liaise with the fire and rescue service to provide an essential link with them during operations. It is important that there is clear information recorded on what is expected of the waking watch and/or the evacuation management. This should also be shared with the residents. It should include what training and competence the waking watch and/or the evacuation management have, and at what periods refresher training is given. The system needs to be tested through a suitable quality assurance process. NFCC always believed that residents could be used, if trained, to carry out the role of waking watch and/or the evacuation management, but this addition makes it explicit. It is for the responsible person or the competent person to demonstrate the competence of the waking watch and/or the evacuation management. A list of the appendices within the updated guidance is given on this slide. Detecting a fire and raising the alarm is the most important thing, and this is why a common fire alarm is the most effective. If you're using a waking watch, it is expected that from identifying a fire, the warning of all residents and their evacuation should have started within 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the risk. If installing a common fire alarm, it is important that the system should be as described in Appendix 2 to ensure all residents get the earliest warning. Management considerations to ensure the evacuation is well drilled and well prepared, including information on using radio and key words that everyone understands, are also given. The role specification of a waking watch outlines the attributes and the duties of this role. This can be used to help train the waking watch and ensure that they are competent. The role specification for the evacuation management outlines the attributes and the duties for this role, and this can also be used to help train evacuation management and ensure they are competent. The appendix on quality assurance includes information on how to ensure that a system is tested and regularly maintained, and there is an indicative timeline to help responsible persons follow a path from the consolidated advice note through to remediation. It may be that, even if all the above guidance were to be implemented, the risk is not reduced enough to enable all the persons to remain in the property, and certain uppermost floors might need to be temporarily evacuated. There should be a liaison with the Fire and Rescue Service in respect of this matter. Any common fire alarm system or waking watch and evacuation management should only be removed when the required remedial works have been completed, a competent fire safety specialist has been consulted, and the Fire and Rescue Service has been notified that the simultaneous evacuation strategy has ceased and the building has returned to a stay-put strategy. A common fire alarm system is only a temporary measure and not an alternative to remedial works designed to reduce the risk from a non-compliant wall system. Where it is proposed to keep the common fire alarm system, responsible persons and residents should be aware of the ongoing maintenance requirements. Consideration could also be given whether it could be converted into an evacuation alert system for use by the Fire and Rescue Service, as described in British Standard 8629. or as a means for giving a remote warning of a fire in a flat. Where this is the desired long-term outcome, this future conversion should be discussed with a competent fire alarm engineer prior to the initial installation of the common fire alarm system, as it will be necessary to over-engineer aspects of the installation. Further guidance on this is outside the scope of this document, and specialist advice should be sought. Responsible persons have to ensure that they are up to date with the latest guidance. Where you have known buildings that have changed from a stay put to a simultaneous evacuation strategy, you should review their arrangements to ensure that they are in accordance with the new guidance. You should ensure that you have documented the role of the waking watch and/or evacuation management and how this has been quality assured. Where you receive complaints about the waking watch, these should be investigated and the documentation should be used to check that they are doing the role they should be. You should ensure that quality assurance arrangements are part of the contract, as the responsible person is responsible for the safety of residents. Whether using a third party or residents, this does not release you from your legal duties. Waking watch costs can be excessive, so please ensure that you are getting the service you are paid for. Even if you are using residents, they also have to demonstrate they are carrying out the role competently and adequately. The NFCC have been made aware of circumstances where responsible persons have implemented a waking watch without undertaking a review of the fire risk assessment and obtaining clear recommendations from a competent person. This means, in some cases, a waking watch has been implemented and then later assessed as unnecessary, and the costs have fallen to leaseholders. Responsible persons should follow the Consolidated Advice Note and implement interim measures following a holistic risk assessment of the building and the fire risk assessment being updated. NFCC would like to give a big thank you to those who contributed and those who jointly badged this guidance.